Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 164 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The Second Amendment podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me, as always, is my host that has zero interest in me, Aaron Paulette. How are you doing, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm not interested.
We've been doing pre-game shenanigans, and Aaron has been entirely disinterested in every subject matter that I've been discussing. But yet he continues to talk. Will he ever learn?
Are you in yet?
And the answer is, I'm 42 years old. No, I will never learn. It's like when people make fun of my horrendous spelling. I'm like, I'm 42 years old. You think I'm going to suddenly learn how to spell now? I've been flunking spelling tests since I was 6.
You know, it isn't your spelling that I have so much of an issue with. It's the fact that you randomly capitalize things.
I do that. I do that. It feels good for my pinky to hit that shift key. It's like the clutch. I'm just double clutching my keyboard.
I mean, I could at least understand if you were kind of following the German rule and capitalizing proper nouns. But no, just sometimes there'll be an adjective that's there. Capitalized. It's an important adjective.
It may be because it's an important adjective. I do know that that I have been suddenly very, very conscious about it when I laughed so hard. It's one of the few things this guy's brought joy to me. But the infamous anti-gun troll Jade Gold. Those of you from the golden age of blogging will know who I'm talking about. Oh, but this dingus did I think he did a blog post on me and joking about, and he randomly capitalized letters throughout the whole post. I think even in the middle of words. And I'm like, you know what? You're a jerk, but that's a fair cop. You got me on that one.
He's out of line, but he's not wrong.
I mean, at that point in time, he wasn't out of line, but that's like a broke watch is right twice a day.
I was making a Marvel Cinematic Universe reference.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay.
I'm way behind on that stuff. Just tell me when they when they redo Howard the Duck, and I'll be in theaters. I'm waiting for it. I saw the reveal at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Uh-huh.
I didn't see Guardians of the Galaxy. Just someone told me Howard the Duck was in it, so I searched on YouTube. Yes, Aaron, I need Jesus. Aaron, how are you doing?
Yeah, I seem to be spending my life in a constant state of WTF, and if you want more explanation on that, just go to Blue Collar Prepping, where I talked about that in my coping strategies and things like that. But yeah, my existence these days, it seems to be just some form of wah, and it could be angry, or it could be sad, or it could be depressed, or whatever. But it's just I am always in some sort of emotionally baffled state, and it's draining on me.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I got to imagine with all the stuff that your dad's going through, it's got to be a bit of a sword of Damocles.
Yeah. Because on the one hand, everything would be so much easier if he just died peacefully in his sleep. But on the other hand, that would be painful for a lot of people. And, then of course, we've got all the problems with the funeral, whatever. And it's just it's one of those... Well, to bring it in line with the blog, you know how there is never a perfect gun. It's always a case of compromise. You've got to trade one thing off to get something else. There's never a perfect solution. And that's where we are right now, and we're beginning to appreciate just how not perfect any of the solutions are. And it's like, what is the solution here that sucks the least? And haven't found one yet.
It's always a 1911, Aaron. It's always a 1911. If I may make another joke, is I too would, like my grandfather, would like to die peacefully in my sleep, unlike the passengers in the car who were screaming.
So yeah, that's what's going on, and it's kind of consuming my life. And Because I've been asked this recently, no, I will not be attending the NRA annual meeting that's coming up in a month or so. And it's for a variety of reasons. Don't know if these are in any specific order or not. The first two are ranked pretty high, but I don't know which one is on top. One of them is, Mom said I could go if I wanted to, but I just feel awkward about taking off for a month and just leaving her all alone in the house. And especially with all the stuff that's going on with Dad right now, I feel like I'm needed here. The other big reason is I don't think it's going to be worth the money paid out. John Richardson wrote an interesting blog article about it, and he linked to another blog called NRA in Distress, I think. And the short version is that they have much fewer vendors than they've had in previous years. And they're probably going to conceal that by making the aisles wider and, having more space between booths and things like that. But it's... And I don't mean like a 10% reduction. It's one of those, it's going to be noticeable. And so between that and, all the garbage politicking that's going on with, the NRA board and the bankruptcy and the whatever, I don't think it's going to be worth the time. It would be an improper use of funds, in my opinion. And then the third reason, which is below those first two, I still have a sneaking suspicion that the meeting might be canceled. And I don't know if I have a particularly high confidence of it. I think it's around 50%. But I could see, like, the state or the convention center or someone getting all worked up about the Delta variant and then just canceling the whole thing. Mm. And then I'm out whatever reservation money and travel expenses and things like that. And so, I've got two financial reasons and one personal reason, and I'm not going to... Any other year, I think I wouldn't feel bad about it. But, like, at this point, it's just, you know what? I'm fine. I'm just going to hang out. And maybe then I can go to a blog shoot in Tennessee in October. I think that'd be pretty cool. And maybe that'll be my big outing for the year.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about the vendors, but that makes perfect sense. And certainly, like, the last couple of years that I've been at the NRA annual meeting, I've kind of been expecting fireworks to happen at the actual meeting itself. And the one in Indianapolis was, what was that? It was just 2 years ago. It feels like 100 years, but yeah, the one in Indianapolis was about as close to fireworks as could be, and nothing happened. And it was, my understanding is Wayne LaPierre pulled some secret, bylaw crap and stopped the insurrection that was attempting to happen, the coup that was happening against him, and played some shenanigans and made it not happen, where they suddenly got like, oh, everyone's all supporting this. And there's lots of people who are on the board of directors saying, no, I voted to remove Wayne LaPierre, and for some reason he didn't count my vote. Mm. So yeah, I didn't hear about the lack of vendors, but between the fact of the lack of vendors, the fact that there's probably not going to be any major news to cover live from the floor, and the fact that, nobody except for, I believe, David may be going. He will be working with Asfalia again, and so he'll be busy. And so it's one of those, I'm not going to go and just wander around alone. I'm too much of an extrovert. I'll be just all lonely and depressed, especially if it's empty.
So you've decided not to go? Because last I heard, I thought you were going.
I was contemplating it, but it turns out it's one of those, I'll just have to get a hotel on my own and just do it all solo. And it's just one of those, that's not fun. I like to have a party.
Well, maybe you can come down for the blog shoot in October.
Yeah. I'll definitely give it some thought.
So while you were talking, I went and I found the article. It's called "The NRA in Danger." It's the name of the blog, and they gave two indicators that that the NRA is in decline. And the first one, you're talking about the vendors, and they say only half of the exhibit hall booths have been rented out.
Wow.
That's huge. And so some former exhibitors, according to this article, have turned down the offer, the request, the whatever to rent a table. Others are still debating it. I don't know what the cutoff point is. Maybe they're wondering about another lockdown like I am. But yeah, only half of the exhibitors there, which means fewer things to look at, fewer things to do. And I don't know where this guy is getting its source, but he also says they expect attendance to be under half. So,
yeah, and of course, also there's still the NRA is under some serious scrutiny from the New York Attorney General, and I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that charges could be leveled, and essentially the NRA could be dissolved by, criminal malfeasance or anything like that. I mean, there's always a possibility of it. I don't think it's huge that they could just, kill the NRA in one shot like that. But there is a potential that New York could do some severe damage to the NRA. And this is the NRA annual meeting. I don't get super, caught up in the politics of the NRA while I'm there. I'm there to socialize with other people and check out the exhibits. But it's not a gun show. The NRA annual meeting is not a gun show. It sure looks like it, depending on how you want to go attend it. But in fact, it is the annual meeting. And if there is no board of directors, because a certain percentage of them are sitting in a jail cell awaiting a trial, or home on house arrest and told not to, and under the statement that they don't leave the state and don't associate with other NRA board members. I mean, that could also cancel the whole thing, because why have the gun show, especially if it's not a whole lot of people there, if there's going to be no annual meeting? So yeah, that's there's a lot of stuff. So yeah, I'm between that and the fact that, there's not going to be a whole lot of people there. Certainly, the plan to set up an ACP house has completely fallen through. And also, furthermore, he talked about having cancellation. I mean, we almost got burned pretty bad. Oddball was nice enough to put up the money for the house rental, and then they were being jerks about the saying, well, you just missed the cutoff date for the cancellation, the day because he canceled the day that the NRA announced that it was canceled, and it was one day after whatever the timeout that Airbnb says that you can no longer rent at. And I'm just like, oh God, I know that the good thing to do is that's why we have our supporters on Patreon, so I can reach into my checkbook and say, here, Oddball, here's the difference. Whatever you're going to do to pay for this house that no one's at. And luckily he got a full refund, so it worked out all right. But we almost got burned pretty bad with that one. So I'm with you on that.
All right, so let's lift the tone a little bit.
Yeah.
Chipman watch. Week X+1. I think we're at 9, or you were counting from a different. I say week 9. You say week watch.
I say Aaron is never wrong. It's week 9. It's week 9, and I'm laughing because when we started this, it was a very, very serious segment. I mean, this guy is an anti-gun lobbyist. He works for Giffords. He's worked for the Bloomberg groups. He's been an ATF agent. He's been kind of a terrible ATF agent. He's a jerk. He is extremely anti-gun. He has extreme disrespect for gun owners, and he wants to be the head of the ATF. And I'm just like, uh-oh. And now as the weeks go on, it's starting to get more comical stuff. It's Chipman watch. So the oh God, where to start? Let's see. I'll start with this one. GOP lawmakers threaten to impeach Biden's ATF nominee David Chipman if he's confirmed. So they've already lined up that he hasn't been confirmed yet. Nobody's making any move to vote on him. It looks an awful lot like there is no vote for him, but we've already drafted up articles of impeachment, and as soon as they can legally be filed, we're going to file them. So I love this of the go ahead and nominate him. We'll kick him right back out. And of course, this will also be a further incentive for people that have feelings of wishy-washy feelings of David Chipman. Because obviously there's people who absolutely hate him. There's people who are super duper anti-gun, supporters of the gun prohibitionist lobby, who are like, yeah, he's our man. And then there's a whole lot of people in the middle, and that's where the fun is showing up. And the possibility that you might vote for the ATF nominee, and I don't know if we've ever impeached an ATF director. This is like history book stuff. Like you voted for them, and then we turned around and impeached him and kicked him out for being just terrible. High crimes and misdemeanors based on grounds found in 2 distinct articles: failure to support and defend the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. It looks straight up treason. And in his current rule, asserting your policy advisor, Mr. Chipman, filed an amicus brief asserting the Second Amendment does not protect the individual right to keep and bear arms. So they're essentially saying that he is.
That's not the second thing, though.
Oh, that
was a follow-on to the first.
Okay,
the second article. And this one, honestly, is worse, because the first one can be interpreted, well, did he fail, or is it politics or whatever? But the second one is far more cut and dried, and it accuses Chipman of falsifying his answers in a sworn document. In other words, he committed perjury when he falsely answered no to questions on whether or not he had ever misplaced a firearm or had it stolen.
Mm-hmm.
And we know now that he had a firearm stolen. His service weapon was stolen out of his personal car by a handyman who was working for him. So, hey, the head of the ATF improperly stored a gun, had the gun stolen, and then lied about it under oath.
And furthermore, he had it stored. I don't know what the ATF regulations are, but specifically in this complaint was pointing out that the gun was improperly stored in that, and especially since improper storage is a huge sticking point. And David Chipman has spoken out in favor of safe storage laws. and yet he did not. I don't know if you're allowed to have it in a secured lockbox or what the story was, but he didn't do any of that. So he's awful. And of course, again, I must point out the allegations of racism and sexism that are also over him. So the Me Too angle could also cut in for David Chipman as well. So yeah. The fact that you might be somebody who would vote in favor of David Chipman and then have him get booted soon after he got sworn in as director, that is the definition of being on the wrong side of history.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there's been a lot of talk, especially recently with all the racial tensions in politics about the various senators who filibustered against the Civil Rights Act back in 1968. Robert Byrd, the former only because he died Klan member was
Grand Cyclops. I do recall.
There is a debate on that. Snopes has some goofy articles about that, and only because the Klan at some point changed around their rankings and gave them different names. So yes, Robert Byrd held the rank of Grand Cyclops. It might not have been the rank that he was called at the time, but either way, he was a recruiter for the Klan out of West Virginia, and a very terrible person. And believe it or not, shocked I tell you, he was against the Civil Rights Act, and that's one of those things that that's a pretty big dig, because you are absolutely on the wrong side of history. So hopefully this will continue to haunt David Chipman and cause it to go through. But hopefully at no point do the Republicans call the bluff and call a vote, because the moment David Chipman gets the vote that doesn't the failure to confirm, I guess is the proper term. I don't know what the proper term for it is, but if he does not get confirmed, then he gets to go back to work for Giffords. Though maybe not either, because who will want him at that point in time?
You have failed me for the last time.
Exactly. And of course, not now that he's down on the ground, I mean, why not kick him? He's that much closer to your boots. Here's an article from I've never heard of this guy. His name is Cam Edwards. Have you ever heard of this guy?
You know, the name is familiar. I think he's got a beard.
He's got like 5 beards. Oh my goodness. He was interviewing on his show the other day. He was interviewing Michael Graham, who was one of the greatest talk radio hosts ever. I don't know if he still does talk radio, but he was on WRKO out of Boston, and he was amazing. He was so funny and witty and great at handling news stories. He's one of the people that inspires me at talking into a microphone. But he was interviewing Michael Graham, and Michael Graham was just like, "I'm afraid of your beard." But Cam Edwards wrote this article, and it's hilarious. Giffords tweet in support of Chipman implodes after gun owners react. And the Giffords tweet, and of course, David Chipman, I believe, is still currently employed as Giffords. If he has been removed from the group, they have done it very, very quietly, because at the time of his nomination, he was absolutely on the Giffords payroll. So Giffords writes, the biggest opponent to David Chipman's nomination for ATF directors, it's not gun owners, it's the gun industry. Chipman's confirmation is literally a matter of life and death, but to the NSSF, it's about the ability to sell more weapons. And Larry Keane, who is the president of the NSSF, said, yes, the NSSF has opposed because your employee is unqualified. Tell me, if President Trump had nominated Chris Cox, are you telling me you wouldn't have been opposed? We have supported every nominee to get out of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Sorry, but we don't think it's right to politicize the ATF.
What's to say about me that I'm just here quietly grateful that they're no longer blaming the NRA for the gun industry, but they're actually blaming quote unquote, but they're actually naming the right lobby group for once.
I mean, that is certainly interesting. And you've got to imagine that the anti-gun groups, especially the big names such as Giffords and Everytown and Brady, are seeing the writing on the wall when it comes to the NRA, especially given that they are just not making as much of appearance as they used to, and they're hemorrhaging money. Yeah. And then there's got like a bunch of other tweets from various stuff. I'm a private citizen, and I vehemently oppose David Chipman becoming director of the ATF because, based on his own words, he doesn't respect neither the Constitution or the rule of law. And it goes on. I'm not going to read all of these, but the link is in the show notes. But
yeah, the short version here is that Gifford says it's not gun owners, it's the gun industry. And I don't know, approximately 1 million or more gun owners tweeted back, the hell we aren't.
Yeah, very, very similar to the NRA doesn't represent gun owners. Oh, yeah? tell that to the to the 80,000 people that show up for the NRA annual meeting. Yeah, they don't represent us, but we're just here to look at some guns. All right, here's another one. Yeah, I
wanted to ask you about this. What? All right, so there's an article here talking about how Barbara Boxer was robbed, specifically mugged, in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, where are we going with this? I mean, she's no longer a politician. She's 80 years old. Why are we talking about a little lady getting mugged in California?
I just wanted to point out that it is a little old lady who is anti-gun, who I believe was one of the few people in San Francisco to hold a carry permit.
I'm not sure about her. I mean, that was definitely Dianne Feinstein. I don't know about Boxer.
I'm looking it up real quick.
I don't know if she was even in San Francisco.
Oh no, it was only Dianne Feinstein. I'd heard somewhere that she had that.
Well, she might have, but not in Frisco.
Okay.
Oh, they hate that. They hate being called Frisco, and they hate being called San Fran. It's either San Francisco or the city.
I like Frisco, though. Frisco's fun to say.
Well, now Now you get that extra frisson if they hate it.
Yes, I just wanted to put that in there, in the fact that I don't know if she still has. I mean, she must not have a protection detail anymore, because there's no talk of them. But just the point of she's just going about her business, and it doesn't actually say what she was up to. But yeah, she got mugged and she got her cell phone stolen. She wasn't hurt, but I just was pointing out it's ironic on we are going to pass all of these ridiculous gun control laws, and it doesn't do you any good. Furthermore, you don't need a gun when your target is an unarmed old lady.
Mm. See, I would have thought it ironic if she had been mugged and then a lawful gun-owning citizen came to her defense.
Well, she worked very hard to make sure that wasn't. She was in Oakland.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of those interesting things. It's one of those, like, I carry a gun when I'm in the city of Boston, but it's one of those, the chances of when somebody, if something bad goes down, most of the people in the city of Boston are Boston residents, and you can't carry if you're a Boston resident. I carry because I'm a resident. I'm a resident of West Morocco, or at least so the Moors say.
Oh, it took me a moment to get the joke, and I'm going, wait, you keep that stuff under wrap? Oh, wait. Oh, right. You're mentioning, yeah. Okay, cool.
I've decided to start calling my hometown West Morocco.
You do you, babe.
All right. Well, a little bit of a down note, just a politics line, but
right, because a little old lady getting mugged is just hilarious.
I know. All right. Maybe it was poor editorial choice, but I stand by it. Is that
double down?
Is that did we mention this? I feel like we mentioned this on the show, that Louisiana had a constitutional carry bill going through, and it went through and it passed, and then the governor decided to veto it. He claimed that polling showed that Louisiana voters thought that people should have training to have a concealed carry permit. I would tell them to wake the hell up and look at the statistics and note that there is no major issues such as, wrongful shootings, misknowledge of the law, or accidents in the states that either A, don't require a training course to get a concealed carry permit, or don't require a permit anymore. And those numbers are quite large. So yeah, if you're afraid of it, you're afraid of it just out of fear itself. But evidently a whole bunch of other people got lobbied and or arms twisted. And there was talk that there was enough people. It passed at a high enough level that they could override the veto, even though that's never happened in Louisiana history, I believe. Does it say? I thought I read somewhere that it's never happened in Louisiana. If not, it's extremely rare. It certainly hasn't happened in any time recently. And so unfortunately they failed to override the veto. So
based upon my understanding, so the resolution was 23-4-15 against. And in order to override a veto, you have to have 2/3. Mm-hmm. Now, I will admit my math is not the greatest, but I believe 2/3 of that number would be 25. In other words, it failed only because of 2 votes, and they made a specific point of saying some people, including some Republicans, changed their minds in the interim.
Mm-hmm.
And so the veto override failed by a pretty slim margin.
Yep.
And so unfortunately, Louisiana isn't getting constitutional carry this year, but maybe in 2 more years, mm-hmm. maybe in 4 years. Who knows? It's a failure, and that's discouraging, but it failed by a pretty slim margin. And I would say concentrate on that and build up your base and, do like, I think it was Andrew Jackson, who, when he lost the presidency, then campaigned straight for 4 years and then won. And it's like, okay, you've got time. Build your base and start agitating now. And you might be able to get it passed, especially if other states around you also pass.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is the more states that get constitutional carry, the more you look like the odd duck being the one that holds it out. New Hampshire was a weird one. New Hampshire, as I love quoting Jay Grazio of the Squirrel Report and Shooting Illustrated, where he referred to the New Hampshire carry permit as why bother. It was literally like $20. It didn't even have your picture on it. The resident one was just made of paper. It wasn't even laminated. It was like filled out in pen. It was the author Marco Close showed me his, and it had like misspellings. And it's just like one of those, like, what are you doing? Like what is this piece of paper doing? And so it was one of those, but why they kept pushing for constitutional carry and it kept going down. And it's like, what are you doing? And finally, Maine and Vermont has never had a carry permit system. Concealed carry has always been legal in Vermont. Maine went constitutional carry. So now all of a sudden, every state touching New Hampshire either had constitutional carry or was Massachusetts. And that's a tough pill to swallow.
So while you were talking, I was looking up to see if Georgia has a constitutional carry bill in the works, and it actually does. And it's House Bill 2, the Georgia Constitutional Carry Act of 21. But Aaron, you live in Florida. Yeah, I know. And Florida's not going to get constitutional carry until after Georgia. That's why. And so it was filed in November of 2020, and I was checking on that, and the last action I heard on it is that it's been read in the House the end of February, and it seems, I can't even say it's died in committee because I don't think it's gone to a committee yet. So unfortunately, it looks like that's dead in the water for this year. But it is to be hoped.
I mean, it's only a matter of time, because the big issue, of course, people are terrible at this, but it seems like a no-brainer. Every state, like the big number of states, have done it, and all of them have seen improvements in their crime rate, and none of the things that one might concern. There certainly hasn't been an increase in crime, which shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't make a difference one way or other for constitutional carry, because it's not like criminals are taking advantage of concealed carry laws. But the thing that I always see the issue with, like trainings and permits and all that, is things like wrongful death. Oh, I thought I could shoot somebody in the back. I thought I could shoot someone for calling me a nasty name, or accidents with people are just stuffing guns in their waistband and it's dropping out and they're shooting themselves in the foot. You don't see that. You see that the only difference is people aren't wasting time and money on these pieces of paper that do absolutely nothing, because you could go into a gun shop and buy a gun. And so there's nothing stopping you from put it in your pocket or put it in a holster. Just the piece of paper says it's legal. So yeah, it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. Well, speaking of politics, to give some of his independent thoughts on politics and other molds and fungi, I present Xander Opal.
Welcome to Xander's Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. Over the last year, I've had a tendency to ping my fellow ACP contributors with video and links to proposed legislation, some of it pro-gun, some of it anti-gun. On many levels, I've yet to have the jaded cynicism more experienced gun owners possess. I don't yet have the experience to tell when something proposed by a senator has no chance at all of getting out of committee. I must say, the emotional roller coaster is somewhere between playing the lottery for a big jackpot and watching weathermen dither on the track of a hurricane. I suppose it's the enthusiastic naivete of a new activist, or someone who has come out of the gun closet. The proposed laws tend to be, I think, a checkbox for continued employment or re-election. I proposed the thing that my darling constituents wanted, but those mean other people blocked it. Some of it is also, I suspect, a personal dragon to slay for the Congress critter. Pro-Constitution or anti-Constitution, they want to make this change to the world they live in. This creates what I like to call teaching moments for the more experienced folks. Please don't just shut the door in the face of the new folks with a sour, "That ain't gonna happen, you're wasting my time." Please consider this. I felt driven out of the skepticism community just by declarations by various well-recognized folks in the group that the right to keep and bear arms must be infringed, if not outright eliminated. I'd been happily in those circles for some years when that happened. Instead of driving folks away by being justifiably bitter and cynical, be welcoming, please. Show how this sort of thing is to be managed. Keywords, phrases, or even people to pay attention to. And remind folks to deal with the often overlooked state and local levels first. Massachusetts didn't get that way overnight. Disgusting overreach by state government isn't seen as rocking the boat because enough people don't look into it. In a way, the go-nowhere proposed legislation on a federal level is camouflage, or can be, for the more local things. Things I'm still learning to manage myself. Meanwhile, hey, Weer'd, check this video out. Have fun? Be safe? I hope I gave you something to think about. By the way, Weer'd, I was just saying that thing about checking a video out for a gag in the segment. There's no actual video to check out. No link to add. This time.
Yeah, I remember back when I was a baby gun activist, and I would get the breathless emails about the impending threat to the Second Amendment, and I would be like, oh crap, what's going on? And inevitably, the graybeards in the audience would be like, this is a nothing burger. We've had this every year. Don't worry about it. And I was like, oh, thanks. I mean, I felt like a dumbass, but by and large, I was treated with a fair amount of patience. It's like, no, it's all right. Everyone goes through this. Just relax.
I remember stumbling into work the Wednesday after President Obama got elected and being like, because I thought we were all done. And granted, President Obama was no friend of the Second Amendment, but at the same time, yeah, he really didn't do a whole lot of damage. So you quickly learn to take things with a grain of salt and know that things didn't get this way overnight. We're not going to be banning all guns overnight, and we're not going to be getting our freedoms back overnight either. And also on the same line, I got to say to Xander, I'm a super political junkie. I love following politics and things like that, but I'm like more focused on like the politicians and the individual bills rather than the procedures. So yeah, like when something's like a 2/3 vote or a 3/5 vote or 50-50 or, simple majority. Yeah. I don't know which one's which. I don't know how the heck that works. I don't know, what the model. I had to ask a friend of ours about so what happens with David Chipman now? Like, he was in the committee, he came out of the committee, now what? And somebody has to ask for a vote and nobody wants to. Oh, that makes sense. So yeah, there's no shame in not knowing because there's a lot of complicated rules.
Yeah, that does seem to be one of my superpowers, because there are a lot of people who are embarrassed, and I'm not going to say they're wrong about it, but they're embarrassed about admitting their ignorance because they're afraid someone is going to make fun of them. My superpower is I have no ego involved in this. If I don't know something, I will rather shamelessly go, I don't understand. Explain it to me. And if they don't explain it well, I still don't understand. I'm dumb. Do it again.
Do it better.
I will
it didn't
keep
work.
going. I will keep being annoying until someone explains it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I do it for two reasons. Because first of all, I legitimately want to know. And it's like, no, I want to understand. I mean, if I didn't care, I wouldn't be asking. I obviously care. But there's also the fact that I know there are a bunch of people who don't know but are embarrassed to ask. Yeah. And it's like, sure, I'll take your flack. I will ask all these questions that you want to know, too. I got no shame in that. It's like a lot of times when you will bring up a political or a bit of esoteric gun law, I will go, so weird. For those people in the audience who don't understand, what does this mean? And a good chunk of the time, I don't know what it means either. So, yeah. That's that. But, I'm told that's unusual, and a lot of people just don't want to admit their ignorance.
Well,
so yeah, be kind to people who ask you for information because they're trying to improve themselves. Mocking people who are ignorant is like mocking, the fat guy at the gym. Look, he's trying to improve himself, okay? You mock the fat people who sit on couches and get fatter, but someone who's actively trying to work that off, no, you encourage them.
Yeah, you mock the ignorant people who are comfortable in their ignorance because
exactly
that's awful. But we're all ignorant about one thing or another. We could suddenly start talking about like calculus, and I'm just going to be like, I don't know. I think I took that class. I don't even know which one that is. I know it's the one that's got lots of letters, and some of them are Greek. But Xander also talks about getting into other groups and suddenly finding yourself being like the only pro-gun person. Jeez, Aaron, you might know a thing or two about that.
Oh God, yes. Yeah. I get it from both sides too. It's like, you're queer, that's great. Wait, you're pro-gun? Ew. Or you're pro-gun, that's great. Wait, you're queer? Ew. And just, come on, guys, stop shooting your allies on the battlefield.
But I mean, the good news about that is being in one of those groups and being the only pro-gun person is you've got two distinct advantages that a lot of people don't have. First up, if you're in this group and operating in this group, you know the lingo that they talk about because every group talks a little bit differently. And so if you talk like an outsider, you're going to be treated like an outsider. But if you talk like an insider, and all that, you're going to be treated as an insider. And then furthermore, the people. So you know what's important to them and what's not important to them. And so about the fact that, hey, if you know this person and they're a big Black Lives Matter report, you can point out the fact that gun control is inherently racist and it disproportionately affects minorities more than anybody else. If somebody's a woman, you can point out the fact that hey, guess what? You are smaller and not as strong. There's a reason why the Olympics are going on right now. The judo, they don't let the men fight the women because it wouldn't go well. So guess what? If you let the women have a gun, they win every time. So
speaking of which, I just found out today that one of our Olympians gold medaled in skeet shooting.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, it's a gun sport. Awesome. Second, she's a woman. Third, she broke an Olympic record. I don't know what. I didn't catch it in time. But, hey, a woman broke an Olympic record and got a gold medal in a firearms sport. Awesome. Will the mainstream media touch it? I'm guessing not at all.
Probably not. Probably not. It's a firearms sport that's still a firearms sport because I believe they've switched to like laser pistols with the pistol shooting events.
Maybe. I don't know anything about that. I do believe they're still using the air rifles for the rifle events.
Okay. But,
I mean, okay, it's an air rifle, but it's throwing a projectile as opposed to emitting light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, good on them. I mean, speaking of the troll Jade Gold, he's getting a lot of play in this episode. But I remember one year I can't remember which Summer Olympics it was, but he was making fun of the fact that all these American gun owners, and yet we didn't medal in any of the major shooting sports. And so it's one of those like, well, first up, it's because they don't have 3-gun. you want to watch the United States just decimate. We're gonna get all the medals. We're just and getting the lead medal and the iron medal and the bismuth medal.
Oh
United States.
I just had a notion because we all remember. I think it was the '92 Olympics with the Dream Team in basketball. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine what would happen if 3-gun or something similar like that became an Olympic sport? And Lena Mikulek entered the Olympics.
And every country surrendered.
I mean, I think Jerry would still dominate, but I get the feeling he would consider himself, I'm too old for this. You
certainly don't hear, and there's no shame in it given his age, but like he was still holding his own and like winning every competition like well into his 60s. And but I think he's starting to lose a little bit off the old fastball, and like I said, there's no shame on it. He's still a ridiculously good shot and still in amazing good shape. But yeah, it's the young bucks are taking over, especially his own daughter.
Yeah, but hey, you always need a coach. There you go.
Exactly.
Coach for the Olympic 3-gun team. Oh, please make it happen.
That would be so awesome. I mean, of course it won't happen because like 99% of all the countries can't even compete in it unless they come to the United States.
I mean, there are some countries like Japan. Their firearms laws are so restrictive that the Japanese athletes can't compete in Japan. I don't know where they go to train, but they can't train in Japan. What the heck?
I honestly speaking, I bet they go to like one of the American islands, like Samoa or Guam.
That makes sense.
That would be easy. I know the English pistol team. They don't have to anymore because now they're using laser pistols. Unless I'm wrong on that. I thought I read that the other day. But yeah, the English pistol team used to have to train in France.
Okay, Weer'd. So while you were talking, I was looking up that mention of Olympic laser pistols, and yeah, they debuted in 2012.
Okay.
So yes, the Olympics have eliminated real pistols for the pentathlon.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does. But you know what else sucks?
What?
Lies and treachery. And yeah, I'm not even going to bother to introduce this interview you have with Tom Knighton. I'm just going to teach our listeners a word. Hopefully it's a word you haven't heard before. That word is called perfidy, which is a state or act of violating faith or allegiance, violation of a promise or vow or of trust. So if someone is perfidious, then that means they are not trustworthy. They are a liar. They are a traitor. Why do I bring this up? Well, there's a topic here called the big lie, and hey, Swalwell is mentioned.
I would like to welcome back to the Assorted Calibers podcast, Tom Knighton of Bearing Arms. How you doing, Tom?
Great. How about you, man?
I'm doing just fine. And let me tell you, there's Ben Franklin said that there's nothing more certain in life than death and taxes. I would say one thing beyond that is Eric Swalwell saying something stupid about the Second Amendment.
Exactly, because well, you got to stick with what you know, and for Eric, that's what he knows.
And you just recently wrote an article on Representative Swalwell, and why don't you just take it away from there?
Okay, well, what was happening? It was when they arrested the 4 people at the hotel adjacent to the Major League Baseball All-Star game. They had a bunch of guns and all this stuff, and Swalwell made a comment about, well, this is what happens in a country with unrestricted weaponry, and I was like, holy crap. Really? Unrestricted weaponry. I mean, it's the most ludicrous 2 choices of words the man could have possibly used. He could have said insufficient gun control, too few regulations. I mean, there's all kinds of ways he could have said it, which would have still been stupid, especially since it turns out that these guys were apparently involved in the illegal drug trade, meaning they could get drugs. Why wouldn't they be able to get guns too? But so many other ways he could have phrased it, but he chose the words unrestricted weaponry. Now, I'm sorry, but if I can't walk into a 7-Eleven and walk out with a grenade launcher, we have weapon restrictions. There is no unrestricted weaponry. If I can't go on Amazon and order F-15s and nukes, we have restricted weaponry. It was the most ludicrous thing in the world when he knows better. He actually has to know better.
Yeah, I almost want to say that this is part of like the big lie. I mean, back during the Obama administration, I actually covered this back in the Gun Blog Variety Cast days, where President Obama said there are certain parts of this country where it's easier to get a gun than it is to get a book, and that is a 100% fact-free statement, because They're the only place that it is easier to get a gun than it is to get a book is maybe if you're some homestead somewhere out in like the middle of Wyoming, and they're not big readers, but they're big gun collectors. That might be the only place.
It's like you break into my house, you're gonna even a criminal breaking into my house is gonna have an easier time getting to my books than my guns.
Mm-hmm.
It's nowhere that. And yeah, it is part of that big lie. It's trying to set the stage and set people's minds to the idea that there really isn't enough gun control. It's part of the reason I don't trust polls that talk about how the American people want more gun control. Because the problem is the poll hasn't established what people know about current gun control laws. There are people who think there's really no gun control laws to speak of in this country. They think I could walk into any store in America and walk out with a machine gun that day with no background check or anything. They actually think that's how the laws work. I mean, when I first got into firearms, I went to a gun show and I bought an SKS. A lot of people's first gun. And they were back when they were really cheap. I paid like $150 for it. And the guy's like, all right, well, we need to do your background check. And I'm like, what happened to that gun show loophole? And he's like, yeah, that don't work. He's like, there is no gun show loophole. We're all licensed gun dealers. We have to do background checks. But so many people think they've heard gun show loophole. They think you can walk into a gun show and walk out with whatever gun you want. No background check, no nothing. And I mean, even Biden sitting there in the Rose Garden giving a press conference said as much. And no, you can't. If you find someone at a gun show that has this, that's selling without a license, they're selling their own collection. It's no different than if you met up through a classified ad. It's just the guy said, hey, a bunch of gun people are going to be here. It's a good place to offload these guns I want to get rid of. That's it. And Swalwell's choice of unrestricted weaponry is most likely an attempt to try to frame it that, yes, there's no restrictions on guns at all. Never mind that this is Denver that has an assault weapon ban. They're in the state of Colorado. They've got magazine restrictions. They've got all kinds of, actually, I don't know they have an assault weapon, but they do have magazine restrictions. They have all kinds of other gun control laws that they've put in since the Aurora shooting.
I believe Denver and Boulder. Only those two cities. You're kind of putting me on the spot here, but I know that Colorado itself does not have an assault weapons ban. They do have a magazine ban, and I believe they do have universal background checks as well, if I'm remembering.
I believe
correctly.
They do that too.
Yeah,
they've been moving more and more towards the assault weapon ban.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, they have preemption, but they also have cities like Denver that can do whatever they want. Meaning preemption doesn't actually mean anything. But yeah, Denver has, I believe you're right that Denver has an assault weapon ban, which clearly didn't help if these were so-called assault rifles. These were assault weapons that were in this hotel. Clearly that didn't work. He's from a state that has tons of gun control. He knows that other states have gun control. He knows at the federal level there's gun control. If for no other reason, NFA 34 should be enough grounds to say, yes, we have weapon restriction.
Yeah, and also California has lots and lots and lots of gun restrictions. They are arguably one of the most restrictive gun states in the union, or one of the most restrictive states on guns in the union. I would argue that the state that I currently live in, Massachusetts, has them beat out, but that's a debatable point. But also they have a massive violent crime problem. They have places like Oakland and San Francisco and Los Angeles that have huge issues with gangs and violent crime. And the gun control laws aren't really working.
No. But it's for someone like Swalwell, especially someone like Swalwell, who has banked so much of their political career on gun control. He can't acknowledge that fact. So instead, he looks at a criminal act, or what was then an alleged criminal act, and has to frame it the most terrifying way possible and blame the access to firearms. It's kind of like, the people saying, it should be easier to vote than to buy a gun. I've never had to go through a criminal background check to cast a ballot in my life.
I don't know anybody who's shown up at an election place, no matter how restrictive it is, to and had them put my ballot on hold. You're gonna have to come back tomorrow to vote. This isn't going through.
Yeah, you're gonna have to wait 3 days.
Yeah, exactly.
and make sure you're registered. And if we don't hear back, we'll just assume you're okay. No, it's none of that happens. You walk in. I'm in Georgia, which our voting laws are now subject of controversy apparently. But here you come in, you show up, you show your ID. They scan it with a little gun. They go, okay, here you go. Fill this piece of paper out, and it's just your name and address, and you sign it to prove you're you. You do that. They give you a thing. You go, you cast your ballot. They run it through their little scanner thing, and you're done. And that part hasn't changed at all. I'm in and out faster than my next checks when I buy a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming, because usually I go during the day when there's no line. I work from home, so I have a lot more flexibility. I like going around like 11 o'clock when there's nobody voting.
I love it. It's the only way to fly.
Yeah, it really is, man. It's like, I understand, when people start saying, we want election day to be a national holiday, and so everybody's off from work. I'm like, no, I don't want that. For selfish reasons, I don't want that. I don't want people there harshing my voting time. But, I'm in and out before they can even do the next check. There's no 4473 to fill out where I've got to, my dad, a retired police officer and a Navy veteran, tried to fill out a 4473 and somewhere flubbed up on one of the questions. And he couldn't, to this day, he didn't know what he did. He could pass a background check. They looked at it and says, I can't tell you which answer is keeping us from being able to sell you the gun, but, why don't you go back over it? And I'm pretty sure it's because everything is no, 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 except for one yes.
Mm-hmm.
And he just went mechanically, no, 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 no. That's probably what happened. But yeah, it trips people up. It's a much longer form. It's more involved filling it out. It's not that big a deal. But they want to frame it that voting is, you're trying to make voting harder than buying a gun, and nothing is further from the truth. All of this is based on, like you said, the big lie. It's trying to sell something that's not a thing to people who don't know any better.
Yeah, I wanted to double back with just one more big lie too, is that you see, and you can go on YouTube and search this, and let me tell you, mix yourself a cocktail and sit back and relax, because this is a fun time, is you'll see the investigative news reporters going into gun shows, and they know about the licensed dealer tables and all that. They're skipping out on the big lie number one, that just the that gun shows are just the Wild West and you can do whatever you want there. It's no different than like a bazaar in the Khyber Pass. But they say, well, if you find a private seller, you could buy a gun from them, no questions asked. And you will quickly see, either it'll be a very, very quick segment because they had to edit out everything, or you will see them constantly being said, all right, cool, I'm going to need to see some ID. And the only reason why you're not going to have a background check is because if you're a private citizen, you can't conduct a background check.
Yeah. Yep. And people want to see the ID so they know that, if it comes back, if the police show up and said, hey, this gun that, you bought from Joe's gun store 5 years ago turned up at a murder scene, you can say, oh yeah, I sold that at a gun show, and let me see if I remember the guy's name. Oh yeah, it was Bob Smith. Oh, okay, thanks.
Or just the simplest thing of you're at a gun show in New Hampshire and you say, hey, I'd like to buy that gun. Cool, let me see a piece of ID, and I pull out my Massachusetts driver's license or my Massachusetts gun permit. Yep. They'll quickly go, yes, we could go talk to a dealer, but I can't sell this to you right now because I'm not allowed to sell firearms across state lines.
Yep. And every gun I've ever sold to an individual, I've seen ID. Hell, I've had people show me their carry permit because it proves that they're lawfully able to have a firearm. Here in Georgia, we can use our carry permit to bypass the NICS check. I've seen people say, I'll only sell it to somebody with a carry permit. Okay, I can respect that. The gun show segments that you're talking about, they're also right up there with the guy who walks into the gun store, asks to see the AR-15, handles it, talks to the clerk a little bit about the weapon, and says, I'll take it. And then the segment cuts out and says, and that's all it takes to buy an assault rifle. It's like, no, there's a whole bunch of crap you didn't show.
You just kept the good parts.
Yeah, they'll let you handle the weapon. It's not loaded. They won't let you load it. And I don't know about everywhere, but here in Georgia, pretty much every employee at a gun store has got a gun on their hip. So if you start trying to load it, you're going to have a bad day.
But yeah, you mentioned the whole, and I've seen it on like gun forums and all of that. I was used to be a member of the Northeast Shooters Forum, and so that covered all of New England. And people from Maine and New Hampshire and all that might put a gun up on the classified section there, and they would say you need to have a valid concealed carry permit because, again, they want to verify that there is a background check. Because you don't know. I mean, I've talked to a bunch of people who have gone into a gun shop to buy a gun and gotten their and flunked their nicks and went, oh, I mean, I did get caught with a joint when I was in college, but I didn't think that was a major thing. It was gone in a weekend. No, you pled to felony drug possession. Yeah, the court didn't care. They charged you $200 and maybe gave you a few hours of community service. But
and a couple years of probation, yeah.
Yeah, but no, was that you pled to an honest to God felony, and that's forever. And so it doesn't matter if both parties don't know that one person's a prohibited person. It's still a crime. And so I think that's another big lie. I talk a lot about how Tom Coburn, after the Sandy Hook massacre, he actually presented a background check bill that essentially would allow people to conduct NICS checks online, and it eliminated the monopoly of FFL holders to the NICS system, and that got shot down by Chuck Schumer and a few other anti-gun advocates. So all the anti-gun groups spoke out against this bill as being horrible and dangerous. And the idea, I guess I'll close on another big lie that pro-gun people are totally against background checks. No, we're not. I mean,
no.
There are some people that we might be able to throw a no true Scotsman fallacy at who are Second Amendment supporters, but also a fan of Bloomberg's background checks. But I would say even people that are against Michael Bloomberg's style background check laws, where you have to go into a gun shop for every gun sale or transfer, I think that the idea that you could just run a background check on your neighbor, run a background check on some dude you met at the gun range, just using your phone and using a positive ID. I don't think a lot of gun owners would have too much of a problem with that.
No, it's as long as it's not something I can just randomly do a NICS check on, my neighbor who has no interest in firearms. I just don't trust him.
I mean, I'd be fine with that too, because that cloudies the registry. So long as there's no make, model, and serial number, and so long as it is not mandating that a gun is even transferred, like, oh yeah, no, you want to babysit my kid? Let me see some ID.
Yeah, I'm saying I can't, I need it. There needs to be some active participation on their part.
I can understand that.
For example, if I've got their ID, they're consenting to me running a background check. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't be able to just, some random person. For example, I shouldn't be able to run a background check on some boy who's talking to my daughter just because he's talking to my daughter,
I don't know. I have a daughter. I'll fight you on that.
I have a daughter too. I have a daughter too, but she's young enough it doesn't really matter. My concern was that I also have a son, and I don't want that used against him for no reason. Now his background check will come up clean. I'm not worried about that. I think there needs to be there's a balance that can be had between privacy and being able to run a background check on someone. Mm-hmm. If someone gives you an ID so you can run their background check, that's consent.
Yep.
I'm fine with that. And if they don't want to consent, you don't let them, you don't sell them a gun. You don't let them watch your daughter. You don't let them do any of that stuff. There's a balance that should be there, but it's not that hard to get that balance. It's really not. And I find it funny that a background check that's less likely to cause all kinds of heartache in the Second Amendment community, meaning you're less likely to get all the gun groups and all the gun rights advocates calling for blood, is the one that the Bloomberg crowd and Schumer and his crowd shut down.
Well, I'll close it one further and say the big lie is that the anti-gun groups care at all about background checks. Because when you do a 4473, it's got my name and my vital statistics, so they can look up and see if I was ever committing a crime or committed or all that. But it also's got the make, model, serial number of the firearm that I'm looking to buy. And
Yeah.
I think that is an important thing of the look, man, that gun is sitting in a gun shop right now. We know it didn't commit a crime.
Really, I think the push on the universal background checks as they're pushing it is just a backdoor gun registration.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you know that, you know where every gun is bought and sold, you know, it won't take long. It wouldn't take much for them to say, oh, yeah, we need to digitize all these 4473s and put them at a central database. Little incremental things. Next thing you know, we basically got gun registration.
Yep.
It just won't be called that.
So again, anti-gunners, they have to live on lies, and sometimes those lies are really, really big. Thank you so much, Tom, for coming on the Assorted Calibers podcast, and I'll have a link to this article on Eric Swalwell that you wrote in the show notes.
I appreciate it.
So, Weer'd, I think it's safe to say that Eric Swalwell is perfidious. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. And ridiculous. Oh, what a loser. Oh, both in presidents and in love with Chinese spies. So, speaking of big lies, I found a trailer for an anti-gun propaganda film, and I felt it was ripe for a Weer'd audio Fisk. Well, it's been a while, but here comes another anti-gun propaganda film. It's been a long while since Michael Moore won the Best Documentary Oscar for his 2003 film Bowling for Columbine. Mostly because soon after the film was released, it came to light that Moore used deceptive edits and staged scenes to tell more of a fictitious narrative than to document true events. And the last time an anti-gun-backed film hit theaters was 2016's Miss Sloane, which was a box office disaster, often compared to Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez's film Geely. Still, here we are. A film that, from all I can gather, is a hit piece on the NRA first, and then an assault on the Second Amendment and a love letter to gun control second. The film is called The Price of Freedom. Ironic, given that their agenda is taking property and freedoms away from people. And it was released on July 7th. And at the time of this recording, unless you want to directly contact the studio and arrange for a private screening, this movie's very limited release is already done. And something tells me the streaming market won't amount to much. Either way, let's have a look at that trailer.
A vigilante and his gun brought terror this past weekend.
Jordan Davis was shot and killed here.
A heartbreaking day in Florida, and sadly an all too familiar one.
So from the word go, they start with some tricks. First, they lead with spree killers. While more people are killed in Chicago or LA in any given week than in spree killings for any given year most years, this is the narrative of gun violence. Part of this is that LA and Chicago are bastions of gun control and are still awash in violent crime. Part of this is sensationalism of a single event killing tens of innocent people versus only one or two people dying in a night, and likely all of them with gang ties. Maybe it's also white privilege. Urban killings disproportionately affect minorities in economically poor neighborhoods, while a spree killer is more likely to strike upper middle class and affluent and white-dominated areas. Further, they're talking about the killing of Jordan Davis and the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas school shooting. Both of these have direct ties to Michael Bloomberg. Jordan Davis was the son of Lucy McBath, who was the director of Everytown before she got elected to U.S. Congress. And Marjorie Stoneman Douglas was the school where Michael Bloomberg launched March for Our Lives. The first headline I couldn't place, but given the video appears to be recorded on VHS and some other features, it may be from the Cleveland school shooting in Stockton, California, back in 1989, which was the event that sparked the first assault weapons ban in the United States. 1989 was 32 years ago. That's a big spread. And they don't really note this. Spree killings are so rare, you need a long timeline, even as a country as big as the United States, to collect many data points.
What does this say about us? We're just willing to let people die because we're afraid of the NRA?
Wait, what? I just mentioned that the news and anti-gun lobbies focus on rare spree shootings rather than the street crime in big cities, mostly because these cities have sweeping gun control laws. And locations of spree killings are almost always gun-free zones. So it could be very easily argued that the NRA, as well as the more effective Second Amendment lobbying groups, are trying to pass laws that make the areas of high violent crime more like the places that have low violent crime, and that the anti-gun lobby is doing the very opposite.
Anybody that thinks the NRA is going to disappear has got another thing coming.
This is former NRA President David Keene. The same David Keene who was fooled by Manuel Oliver in his elaborate stunt to create a fake high school graduation where Keene and Dr. John Lott spoke at. Either David's getting a lot of business lately, or he's just happy to talk about the Second Amendment to anyone who will listen. Either way, he isn't really wrong. The NRA is in big trouble right now, but even if things continue to go bad for them, I don't see the NRA just evaporating. Potentially something called the National Rifle Association will live on. And certainly all the things the NRA was founded on will still live on through the actions of the activists who work for the NRA. I can't say the same thing about Michael Bloomberg's groups. I'll be curious on what happens to Everytown and the rest when the 79-year-old billionaire shuffles off this mortal coil.
The NRA wants you to believe a fantasy about our founding. There should be no regulation of firearms. That couldn't be further from the truth.
Really? Because way back in episode 7, I did a Fisk on an anti-gun shill who also tried to claim that the Founding Fathers loved them some gun control. That video was filled with bald-faced lies, the best of which was claiming that the University of Virginia, which is founded by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, banned guns on campus, when in fact, guns were required for students. And if a student didn't have a firearm, one would be provided for them by the school at no additional cost.
There were literally thousands of gun laws.
Who could own a weapon and who couldn't? You had to register your weapons. It is absolutely clear that our founding fathers loved gun control.
Now this is very confusing, because they're showing pictures of Old West towns that require guns to be surrendered to the sheriff upon entry of the town. But the battle at the OK Corral was nearly 100 years after the ratification of the Second Amendment. I think I well established back in episode 7 that the founders would find modern gun control ridiculous and tyrannical. But the Old West gun laws are equally misrepresented. Yes, the battle at the OK Corral was over gun control. And Tombstone, as well as many other Old West cattle towns, did indeed have an ordinance against carrying firearms in town. What isn't spoken about was these laws were very selectively enforced. In fact, these ordinances were there to disarm cowboys, who would frequently enjoy the drinks, women, and gambling in town, as well as the native population and freed slaves, whom the local constabulary might not want armed. But the resident of the town had guns and were often armed.
They have not only rewritten the history of the United States, they've rewritten the history of their own organization.
Okay, now this is laughable. The previous line, they claimed the Founding Fathers loved gun control, which is totally false. But also, the NRA rewrote their history? The NRA was founded by Civil War generals when they noted that the urban Union troops were far worse marksmen than the rural Confederates. They formed the NRA to encourage marksmanship and shooting competitions, as well as facilities to improve American shooters. I think that technically means that the NRA was founded as a paramilitary group to make sure every American could be an expert soldier in the next call to arms. If anything, the cool NRA, which was all about hunter safety and preserving hunting lands, was the odd chapter in the NRA's history.
NRA was a positive force in American life for a very long time.
And now they're overwhelmed with corruption and criminal activity. Hopefully the NRA, or what becomes of them, will go back to protecting our rights from liars like these goons soon.
It transformed into something entirely different.
Oh, you mean how they went from a paramilitary group training future soldiers to a bunch of Elmer Fuds who were willing to bargain with the anti-gun lobby? Oh, but it was bad when they turned back? I'm sorry you think so.
You're saying that is a liberty at the expense of 25,000 lives.
Those things are worth all the lives you will ever pay for.
I really don't know what this exchange is, but it's a common framing of the gun control argument by the anti-gun lobby. To paraphrase, gun control groups want gun bans and restrictions for the purpose of saving lives. The pro-gun people feel that the deaths and violence are an acceptable price to live free. I assume this argument is how the movie got its title, implying that people who are hurt and killed in this country are killed because we are free. Now that would be an interesting and difficult debate to have, if we were stuck with the choice between the Second Amendment and safety. But as I said before, the most liberal states as far as guns go are some of the safest states. There has never been a school shooting at a school that allows guns on campus. Further, while it's implied that the United States is a dangerous country, when looking at the world without cherry picking, we are one of the safest nations in the world. So in fact, I'll keep both my guns and my safety. Win-win.
My son was murdered because they were arguing about loud music.
This is Representative Lucy McBath. I talked about her and her son in episode 108. The bottom line is her son was murdered. And despite the murder happening in Florida and his killer claiming he was standing his ground, he was sentenced to life in prison. The gun laws worked.
Has to be some common sense in our gun laws.
I agree. We shouldn't be banning guns because of arbitrary features or arbitrary magazine sizes. You shouldn't need half a dozen permits to travel around the country. And there shouldn't be states where you can't easily get a permit. Oh, wait, is that not what you mean? Because gun control laws are friggin' insane, and a common sense solution would be repealing them.
All our government can do is send thoughts and prayers that it's time for victims to be the change that we need to see.
Here's Emma Gonzalez, who is credited as X Gonzalez. I couldn't find any public statements about the name change. Still, this is a clip from a speech that was sent to me by listeners, and I refused to Fisk it. She said a ton of anti-gun talking points, but she was also speaking faster and more jumbled than other speeches of hers that I'd heard previously or since. I felt she was having a very bad day for some reason or another, and it wasn't fair for me to attack her on this particular speech. I really think the student spokesmen of March for Our Lives were being used by the organization, which I think was illustrated clearly with the rocky history between the group and David Hogg.
Gun violence should be treated like an epidemic.
The only reason for this line is they want the CDC money back. Of course, CDC money expressly can't be used for gun control because people like Arthur Kellerman and Garen Wintermute decided to write garbage anti-gun hit pieces and use taxpayer money to pay for it. Sorry, aunties, you lost your privileges.
The NRA believes that deaths of innocent people is the necessary price to pay to exercise their freedom.
Bill Clinton. By record, the most anti-gun president in U.S. history. This is a guy who spearheaded the frivolous lawsuit to attempt to bankrupt the U.S. gun markets. The guy who initiated deadly raids in Waco and Ruby Ridge that killed innocent women and children over spurious weapons charges. The man who overnight shut down a vast majority of kitchen table FFL holders. The man who signed the Brady background check bill and the federal assault weapons ban into law. Good to know where this movie stands on gun control. But as I said above, like or hate the NRA, the policies they fight for reduce violent crime, not grow it. Hell, Bill Clinton was president for the Columbine massacre and the media circus that inspired many a copycat school shooter. And all those shooters walked past gun-free school zone signs that were placed there per orders of President Bill Clinton. Oh, and this is the same president who ordered an airstrike in Iraq to distract the media from an inappropriate sexual relationship he was having with a subordinate in the White House. I'll note that when this tactic didn't work, no further strikes were needed. So much for concern for innocent lives. I'll probably watch this movie if it ever sees the light of day. I have my doubts that it will. Those are your anti-gun talking points and a few rebuttals to combat them.
You know, I had at least heard of Miss Sloane. And maybe that was because it was back when blogs were more of a thing and people were talking about it. But up until this Fisk, I had never heard of The Price of Freedom at all.
I would have never heard about it except for YouTube was pushing on it really, really hard. Every time I put up a YouTube video for, you know, the 2 weeks before the 4th of July, that was when I noticed it. It was this ad, and I won't lie, I kind of like the YouTube ads. I mean, sometimes they're annoying, but I feel like you kind of when you pull the plug, we haven't had TV in like decades. When you kind of pull the plug, there's a little bit of like pop culture that you kind of miss out on what's being advertised. And so when I see one that's interesting, I'll watch it. And yeah, it was getting pushed on me really, really hard. And so I'm like, okay, my weird sense is activated. Let's click on over to and watch the full trailer. And I was just like, oh yeah, this is a good one. We'll see. I mean, I looked and see. I mean, I don't want to give them money. Like I don't want to like help, line the pockets of these anti-gun groups that are financing this. And I certainly don't want to make people think that it was good.
Torrents.
Yeah. I could steal, but I don't even know if you could steal this because, like I said, it was in such limited release that like I think there was only like 3 or 4 cities that had this, and it was only for like a week or two. So like this thing practically doesn't exist. But we'll see if it pops up somewhere. I did. Miss Sloane did come up free on Amazon Prime, and I watched it. I highly recommend not watching it. It was awful.
Oh, I was about to say, ooh, is there going to be a film track for it?
Yeah, no, I'm not even going to like. Who would want to do that? Like, not only was it like an anti-gun propaganda film, but it was poor in every way, shape, or form. Like there was a scene where Miss Sloane gets like mugged, and a concealed carry holder actually like fends off the attacker, and it's just one of those like, wait, what are you even doing? Like this is. Like it's just it doesn't even have like a good direction, and Miss Sloane as a character is horrendously unlikable. There's no redeeming qualities to her whatsoever, and including her story arc. And it's just there's a reason why it is listed like next to Geely as like worst movies ever. I haven't seen Geely. I'm not going to. I'm a grown ass man and I've got guns. You can't make me. But yeah, so. Yeah, that's one of those movies. I'll watch it if I could get a hold of it just because I'm curious. But oh boy, and also this is another. You talked about the how Giffords was going after NSSF, which was the correct lobby where they were talking about this is the lobbies for the gun industry. This probably they started their funding for this and writing the script for this before the NRA started getting into hot water. But yeah, they're still going after the NRA for the boogeyman, and I don't think the anti-gun groups need to be as afraid about them anymore. I'm certainly not like holding much water for them to fight for us. So yeah, go ahead and go after the NRA. By the time anybody sees this movie, they might already be gone. But that all being said, I throw a lot of shade at the NRA, but the constant statement like that the NRA is responsible for deaths and all that is patently ridiculous. I am not pissed off at the NRA because they're supporting bills or laws that get people killed. No, just the opposite. They absolutely support bills and laws that save lives and have been proven to save lives. I'm just ticked off that they're spending money on Wayne LaPierre's expensive suits and sending him off to Africa to shoot elephants and for a documentary that they never make. And all that. It's just I'm mad because I don't think that they're fighting for us anymore. And that's it. Thanks to each and every one of our listeners, and a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. To our Patreon and patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like our hilarious blooper reels, the ACP film tracks, and the ACP mag dump.
That sounded kind of dialed in at the end. Nah, blooper reels and film tracks and
I'm sorry, they're freaking awesome.
Also, please remember to rate us friggin' awesome on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us on the friggin' awesome platform of your choice. And share the friggin' awesome show with your friends, both online and off.
You can get more from me at my friggin' awesome blog. That's weerdworld.com. That's friggin' WERDworld.com. And you can also hear me on Handgun Radio with Ryan Machad, who's also from Maine and also has a horrible accent.
You can get more from me at the usual places. That's Blue Collar Prepping, and Lurking Rhythmically, and Pink Pistols, and Blazing Sword. And if you don't know if it's .com or .org, you're wrong. You should already know these things. You're Paulette, bitch.
And thanks to Nate Spencer, because he's from Maine too, and he's wicked sweet, dude.
So, Weer'd thinks Italian greyhounds are the most worthless dogs in creation, whereas I think all puppers are adorable. Our sense of taste is obviously assorted, mine's correct, and so is our podcast. Good night, everybody.
Good night.